Okay, we're live. This is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm attorney Vincent Davis, and we're joined tonight by very special guests. Miss Cassandra, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
With Georgette Truen, Miss G, and we have a special guest, Savannah. Savannah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So you're a guest on tonight's show, so you must have some connection with CPS. Is that correct?
I do.
What's the connection?
When I was a child, I was in the system, and then uh, about our case is currently closed, but about 2.5 years ago, our children were removed by CPS.
So the case was closed and now it's back open?
No, my case is completely closed. Our case is completely closed.
Are the kids with you?
Correct.
And so tell me what's your connection? What happened that was kind of out of the ordinary?
Um, so in November of 2019, my husband and I, our 2-year-old daughter was at the babysitter's house, which was on post. So my husband is active duty military, and we were told that she fell down the stairs. So they flew myself and our daughter to the children's hospital. At which point, as soon as we literally got in the hospital, I had a social worker from the hospital asking me what happened. And I told her, well, I was told she fell down the stairs. She was at the babysitter's house. Well, our daughter ended up basically sub- succumbing to the injuries that she sustained. And during that time, about a week after she passed, CPS came in and removed our other 3 children.
And how did you end up getting them back?
Um, we hired attorneys. They were in Missouri, which is where our case was done at the time. They were in what Missouri calls it a kinship, so they were with my aunt. And the attorney that we hired, she was a former juvenile family court judge. Um, and then we hired a secondary attorney, and they basically, about 2 days before the adjudication hearing, I guess is what they call it in Missouri, they withdrew everything because our daughter's autopsy came back and basically proved that we didn't do anything. Um, the problem that I think they were having at the time is the injuries that our daughter sustained. 90% of her brain was damaged. So with the brain, they were basically trying to figure out, okay, if she fell down the stairs, she fell hard enough to hurt her brain, but didn't break any bones. And then the other thing that they were thinking is with the brain, you can have an injury a few days before, and it could take a few days to take effect. And so they put in the petition that my husband and I are the natural parents and that we were the alleged perpetrators. Yet the investigator made no mention of our daughter being at the babysitter's house or anything.
And what was the reason they gave you, if any, that they decided to drop the case against you?
Um, well, in Missouri, because our daughter died and it wasn't like I guess like a normal, I don't want to say normal CPS case, but with a death case, they worked directly with law enforcement. There was law enforcement, there was um another like entity team, I don't know what they call it, and then they also had the military on the case. And they withdrew the, I guess, the petition of charges. And even though they withdrew them, we kept our children with my aunt because after our daughter passed, our son, who was 5 at the time, he basically went mute. He would not talk. He wouldn't talk. And so he was really progressing in the care of my aunt. And so basically, we actually took possession back, I guess, where they came to live with us back full time in June of 2020.
So after they dropped the case, how long did you let the kids stay with your aunt?
About 3 months.
So you didn't have to have a trial or anything because they just dropped the case.
Yeah, when the autopsy came back, and like I said, 2 days before the adjudication hearing, our attorney subpoenaed the babysitter and her husband. And I think between the autopsy and those subpoenas going out, they realized like there was no, they couldn't win. Um, so then, they dropped the case. They never did apologize, like, hey, sorry for removing your kids. They did not remove other couples' kids either, which was something our attorney kept bringing up. Are you going to remove their kids? And they were saying things like, well, we're looking into it, but they never did remove them.
You mean the couple of the, meaning the babysitters?
Correct.
That's interesting. Tell me, if I hope this isn't too personal of a question, what did the autopsy show as the cause of death?
They ruled it a homicide, blunt force trauma to the head and neck, um, hyperextension of the neck. We're not even sure because the case, that part of the case is kind of in the um, federal Department of Justice criminal proceedings. And the only thing that basically it boiled down to is it's like he beat her to death. We're not sure if he snapped. We're not sure what happened.
Who beat her to death?
The babysitter's husband. I just want to add that we knew the couple for 10 years as well. Um, because that was the thing in the beginning. They thought we didn't know them. And that, I just picked them off of Craigslist. No, we were staying with them at different duty stations, and we knew them for over 10 years.
So let me get this straight. Is the babysitter's husband in jail?
He's in criminal proceedings.
Okay, so they are prosecuting him then.
Correct.
How long has it been?
Uh, November 15th is when we legally had her declared like brain dead. The incident happened in November 6, 2019. So it was 9 days in the hospital.
So this is 2022, almost November 2000. So his criminal case has been going on for 3 years.
Yeah, because so where she died, it was on federal jurisdiction, and I don't know how it is in California, but there's like double jeopardy. But if you have the Department of the Justice and the military, they both can coincide on the investigation, meaning they both can file charges. And so basically, the military was waiting on to figure out if they were going to put the case through what's called a Title Chapter 10, a military court martial, or if they were going to hand it over to the Department of Justice. So when they decided that they wanted to hand it over to the Department of Justice, they took it. Then they had to go through the whole case file. Then the federal prosecutor who was on the case, she ended up getting in a different position. So then we had to wait for the new federal prosecutor to take it to a grand jury.
So has he confessed at all or
No,
indicated?
he won't. He basically he wrote me a note the day that everything happened, and he says that she felt that he shouldn't have removed her off the couch. He claims that the first story he said was he took her off the couch, he took her upstairs to lay down, and basically when he was in the kitchen, he heard a thump and she was on the bottom of the stairs. He told CPS that she fell down the stairs. but on the 911 call, he says that she fell down the stairs, but she hit her head hard. But he won't say anything else. When our daughter's story was released in a newspaper article, the journalist, of course, reached out to them and they declined to comment. And then, as soon as he found out that they were doing the story, he went and got legal representation from JAG. Well, then, when the military turned the case over to the Department of Justice, he could no longer have representation through JAG, so he had to go get a federal attorney.
Well, he would have, or he could have gotten a federal public defender,
Mm-hmm.
but he decided to hire a private
Correct.
um, attorney. Okay, got it. And what state is this in?
Missouri.
In Missouri.
Mhm.
Do you currently live in Missouri?
Actually, no. They PCS'd us to Texas.
Say that again.
We're in Texas now.
Okay. What did you say about CPS initially? You said,
Oh, they PCS. The military, they moved us to Texas.
oh, I see. PCS. Okay. They gave him a different duty station.
Correct.
What branch of the military were these two? I guess your husband and this other gentleman. What were, alleged?
My husband's still in Army.
What's his MOS?
He's a 88 Mike.
And what is that?
It's a truck driver.
Oh, okay. I was an Army brat.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My father was a military policeman.
MP.
CID.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. That's the entity that was on the case.
Cassandra, did you have any questions for our guest?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. I guess we'll go to Miss G. Miss G, did you have any questions?
I'm sorry, you're talking to me?
Okay, Savannah?
Yeah.
Is there... Of course I was talking to you. Who else is Miss G?
I want to change my name so badly.
Me too.
Savannah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Brian. Okay. Savannah. I do have a question to ask you.
Okay.
I have a question to ask you, but I just can't get it out. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'll ask you in a few minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on, Savannah. Savannah, have there been any lawsuits arising out of your unfortunate incident with CPS?
The lawsuit?
Yes. The attorney that we used for the actual case, she did not feel comfortable representing us on a lawsuit against CPS. And the only way I can explain it is I feel like because they all work together, because she also serves as a guardian ad litem on other cases. So, they're all in court together. They're all working together. But yes, we ended up getting a different attorney. So yes.
And how is that case progressing?
It's going. I do know that after they the autopsy and they withdrew everything, and then when the criminal case basically was solved, they basically I don't know if you would call it fired or if she just moved, because the social worker that we had for our children, she was a social worker, but she actually ended up moving to probation and parole after our case. The original CPS investigator ended up moving to a whole nother state after our case.
So is your case against CPS in state court or federal court?
It had to go through federal.
Okay. And do you know what stage? I mean, have there been any motions made? Motion to dismiss, motion for summary judgment?
They wanted to, I guess they have filed a motion to dismiss. I know they have filed a motion to, I guess, suppress certain evidence is what they call it. But that's as far as we've known so far.
Okay. Savannah, did you have any questions for me this evening regarding CPS
Um,
or the federal lawsuit?
I mean, my case is closed. I appreciate what you guys are doing because there's not a lot of outlets out there with information. Um, I really wanted to do the interview because my husband and I have been married 15 years. And like I said, we lost our daughter, and a week later, they came in and removed. They will try to do anything to put one parent against the other. Like I said, when I was younger, I was in the system. And one mentioned the original CPS investigator is when I was in the hospital with our daughter and my husband was with our other three children. She was at my house and she stepped outside the house. And I said, "Well, why are you outside?" She was, "Well, I just want to let I I was like, "My record." She was like, "Yeah, your juvenile record when you were in custody." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, why are you outside the house?" And she's like, "Well, I wasn't sure if your husband knew about that." I was like, "Yes, he knows I was in foster care. I'm not going to hide that from him. He knew that." Um, so, like I said, we were very lucky. Um, my family stepped in, my husband's family, um, you know, stepped in, and we've never had any allegations against us or anything. We had prior babysitters and nannies, ready to testify. And like I said, 2 days before adjudication, it was like, up, withdrawn.
Do you have any idea that was going to happen, or was it a complete surprise?
My husband and I were honestly surprised, but I think our attorney kind of maybe had an idea that it would happen, but he didn't really tell us. Kind of one of those things like, this is what I think might happen, but don't get your hopes up type of thing.
Miss G, I'm coming back to you.
I don't know why, but okay.
That's my Wawa. I apologize.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Tomorrow, my name is not going to be Miss G anymore. So, just giving you guys a heads up. So, and I'm not telling anybody what it is. So, go on, Mr. Davis.
Oh, you don't have any questions?
No, actually the question I was going to ask her was about the lawsuit, but I couldn't say it for some reason. But I'm glad that she has her federal lawsuit is in the works, correct? Right?
Yes, ma'am. I do want to ask Mr. Davis, how are they able to do this? I'm just curious.
How can what?
How are they able to come in and remove children? Because it seems like the children that do need to be removed are never removed, and the children that don't need to be removed are the ones that are removed.
I talk about that a lot on my shows, and Cassandra heard me many times say that. When you mentioned earlier that they turn the parents against each other, they do. And I said that on my shows like more than 100 times. And they turn the families against each other first. Because I say this, when you guys are united together in unity, you guys are stronger. When you guys are divided, you guys are weaker. Therefore, you're not going to receive any help, any emotional or support or financial support from your family. So they have to target the family first, then they move in against you, the weaker link, which is the mother, because mothers are vulnerable, they're emotional, and they don't speak logical when it's about their children. They're more like, I want to protect my child. This is my child. This is my heart. This is my soul. Why are they doing this? So you become too emotional and not thinking logical.
And also, mothers are like the master link to everybody. So you mess
Every
with them, you break the whole chain.
Well, yeah. So basically, the social workers, in order for them to, I call them gaslighting because they're narcissistic idiots. And what they do, they gaslight you. They push you and push you and push you using your child or your children, and then you react to the bullshit. Then they say, "Look at her, she's crazy." So it's like you don't win. You If you cry when they take your children, you're weak, you're crazy. You need evaluation, mental evaluation. They smile at you when you're crying, laugh at you when you're crying. But if you don't cry, which is sad, they say, "Well, you don't care about your child. You don't care about your children." So there's nothing you can do that is correct or right. No matter what you do or no matter what you say, it's going to be the opposite. So that's why I tell the families. I used to do a relative fight CPS show, and I was so disappointed from relatives because they believe social workers and they go against their own flesh and blood. And that really made me sad. They made me really, really sad. And they
Mhm.
don't target the abused children. What they do, what I've noticed social workers do, is that the Gabriel case that was all over Netflix, for example, right? They knew that child was being
Yes.
abused by the mother and her boyfriend. They knew it. They knew it, but they left the child there. Why? So in the news, they say, "Oh, well, that's why we take kids from families because they're abusive." So it's kind of like showing the public, "Hey, look, the mother is abusing her child and allowing the boyfriend to abuse the child. But why
Mhm.
didn't you take the child back then? Why did you wait until the child died and then you intervened?" So they don't take damaged kids because they're not adoptable. They take kids who are not damaged so they can brainwash and get what they want out of them. How do they brainwash the children? If you say this, you're going to go see mommy again. If you do this, you're going to see mommy again. But if you don't do this, you will never see mommy again. I mean, it's the kids are little, they're young, their brain hasn't developed, and they're naive and gullible, and they would believe anything. Then they will tell like preteens, "Well, if you do this, I'm gonna get you an iPhone. If you do this, I'm gonna get you a you know Mac computer." Whatever they crave, whatever they want, they will accommodate them. And then they will teach children that it's okay to have sex. It's okay to take a condom and keep it in your purse or your pocket. All this bullshit that they feed the kids to get what they want. So why do they not take, again, I'm going to repeat, why do they don't take damaged kids? Because they're not adoptable. And I told you guys before, there's two foster homes, an adoptive foster home and a regular foster home, who don't want to adopt, but they can take legal guardianship, or they want to have kids placed, you know, off and on with them. But the adoptive foster home, they have that in specifically for parents who want to adopt but don't want to pay a lot of money. That's the cheapest way to adopt. So oftentimes, when people deal with CPS and there's like a specific child that was just born or what have you, blue eyes, blonde hair, example, they know that adoptive parents, that foster parents, want a child like that. Believe it or not, they do tell the social workers what type of children they prefer. So when they see one, and then oftentimes doing the investigation, you guys think it's just an investigation, but this is far from the truth. What they're doing is they're taking their time, but they're really not taking their time. They're already 40 steps ahead of you or more. They're just looking for that foster home that wants to have that child. And if it's a special need child, you better believe they're trying to find the suitable foster home that will take that special need child, because they make more money for special need children, mind you not. And they get more money for adoption. So guess what they're going for? They're going towards adoption. When children are a certain age and they're adopted, they call it the adoptable age. So they do make more money when they're adopted. Social workers are entities that works through the states. So that's why oftentimes people say, no, the court appointed attorney will help me. He told me he's going to do this, he's going to do this, he's going to do this. And towards the middle of the case, that attorney didn't do shit. So that attorney gets paid by the state. That attorney will get paid regardless if he or she works on your case or not. So yes, free sounds great. Free is great. If I go to Costco and they tell me you're going to get this for free, well, guess what? I'm not going to pay for the other product, which is similar. I'm just going to get the free one. Why would I pay for something that's offered to me for free, right? The only thing that makes it different is the name brand, but it's the same thing. Same thing with court-appointed attorneys. It's the same shit. It's just a completely different world, because that piece of shit will never do what is right for their client. Why? Because he or she gets paid from the state. Why should they work hard? But when you guys call private law firms, they get paid for services that they offer to the clients. So basically, our attorneys actually have to work for a freaking living, but the court-appointed attorneys will get paid whether they help you or not. So you guys need to keep in mind, when it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. CPS attorneys will never do what is right to get your children back in your home. Another thing, when you guys working towards the, God, I wrote it down because, so before you get to your TPR stage of your case, obviously, if you guys do not get reunification services, if you guys do not get, what do you call it? Where they monitor your parenting activities with your child, and you guys are going towards the TPR stage of your case, there is things that has to be done in it between that and that, right? And your attorneys will not do it for you. When there is witnesses, for example, if you're going towards your trial and there's no witnesses to be cross-examined, but the attorney will tell you that they subpoenaed those witnesses, and then the client doesn't see those witnesses in court, then the client will call the witnesses like, why didn't you show up? The therapist, the psychiatrist, whoever it may be. They say, we've never been served. They were never notified. But the court-appointed attorney will lie deliberately and say that they notified them and they subpoenaed them to go to court. They lie intentionally. They are not going to bite the hand that feeds them. Remember that. They're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. And they don't like shows like this because we expose the truth. And when we expose the truth, they feel threatened. And they think they can call, the host and threaten them like they did today, for example. But see, what they don't understand is I don't care for threats. I don't take it very, I don't care. Like my word, I will literally speak my mind no matter who you are. I'm not afraid of no one. The only one I fear is the one that has the authority to put me in hell for eternity, which is my God. That's it. I don't fear man or woman, because they're just humans, just like me, just like you, just like everybody else. But because of a badge, they feel power.
Right.
To me, a badge means nothing. Title means nothing. It's who you are that matters. And that's what they fail to see in me. So when they threaten me, I don't care. So, yes, they do watch our shows. They do know who we are, and they're scumbags. And I'm going to continue to say it. And there's nothing they can do because I am speaking the truth, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. So I am very proud of anyone, Savannah, that has the balls to speak the truth and no fear. So they do this with everybody, like I said. And Savannah, you're not the only one nor the last one. And I
Right.
do know the question why they don't really focus on the abused children. That is why they're damaged
Okay.
goods. That's my truth.
Well, I appreciate it. And when the kids were in the system, uh, we were paying between my husband and I $2,000 a month in child support. But they were using my husband's TRICARE to do everything. Like they had the children go through X-rays to look at their bones. They had them go through a psychological exam. My husband and I did not have to get evaluated by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Our attorney fought that and won. They wanted us to, but it didn't pass. But they were like normally, I guess, when a child goes in the system, like any type of hospital bills or whatever, they put that through like the state. No, they submitted everything through my husband's military insurance, and then we were on top of that paying $2,000 a month in child support.
Hmm. Hmm. That's the thing too that I question the child support part, right? The system has your children, yet they control you by also paying them child support. Which,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, that money goes into the foster parent. So the foster parent gets
We were
gain the
able to
benefit
fix
of having the
that.
children. Yeah, gain the benefit of you paying
Right.
them child support, but yet they don't want to leave the children with family members. Why? Because Bill Clinton 1997 Act says placing the children in a non-family member home. They'll get the incentives when the children are placed with a non-family member home, basically in a foster home. So what does the social workers do, or the entity do? They set rules in place to violate your rights and everybody else's rights. Let me tell you how they do that. They violate your rights by basically saying to the grandmother or to the aunt or uncle or whoever it is, "Oh, why don't you go ahead and be a foster parent? So you could have placement of the child or the children." Since when does an aunt or an uncle need to be a foster parent to have their own flesh and blood placed with them?
Mm-hmm.
And then when they become a foster parent, the social workers win. That entity win. They get the incentives, and then they control that family member by doing the following. They control them by, for example, having them complete paperwork every year or
Mm-hmm.
every 6 months. If they fail to complete the paperwork within a certain amount of time, say they're sick in the hospital or they had COVID or whatever, then they say, okay, we're going to take the children from you now because you failed to follow the rules.
Right.
And then that's recycling the kids, taking the kids, making more money of the kids, and placing the kids in a foster home. Is that for the best interest of the child or the children? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But they don't want parents to know that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they violate your rights, by setting rules in place to violate your rights. Remember that.
Amen.
Wow. I'm sorry. Did you say something, Mr. Davis?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Cassandra, did you have anything you wanted to add tonight? I don't know if you can follow that one, but
I don't think I could follow that one either.
Thank you, Sandy. I do have passion in my voice because I love helping others. I really, truly love helping others. However, the deception in the system, it's brainwashing you guys. It's brainwashing you guys thinking they're doing the right thing. And then before you know it, your hearing for termination of parental rights is coming up and you guys don't know what to do. So you guys need to wise up, and the family, please do not let them turn you against each other. Do
I,
not allow them to turn you against each other.
um, I,
I
so,
can't hear you, Savannah.
huh?
I can't understand what you're saying, honey.
I said I was curious because the state of Missouri, they are in the system for 18 months. Basically, they move to terminate rights. Is that how it is for you guys in California?
I didn't hear you, but maybe Mr. Davis did. I don't understand what you're saying.
Savannah, you said something about terminating rights. In
Yes.
California, there are different ways and different time periods where they can terminate rights. It could be after the jurisdictional and dispositional hearing. They can move for what's called a 2-6 hearing. They could go for the 2-6 hearing after 6 months. They could go for it after 12 months. They can go after it at 18 months. So, virtually in California, at any turn, depending on the facts, the circumstances of the case, CPS can move for a 2-6 hearing to terminate your rights. Now, it doesn't always happen, and the law is not actually drawn up for that to happen in every case, towards the beginning. But as the case goes along, there are different ways CPS can get off the freeway, the family reunification highway, and go to the, termination hearing highway. But, it's different in every case. I hope that makes sense to you.
It does.
Okay. We have Sandy commenting on Miss G. Love the passion in your voice. Sandy, so genuine and passion. Elizabeth, nicely put, lady.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate that.
Sandy asks another question. What's the durations of dependency court process for toddlers? Well, I'm going to assume you mean people 3 years of age and under. And for dependency court in California, the the judge doesn't have to offer you family unification services, but for 6 months. A lot of people, for a long time, it was you get FR services for at least 12 months. Well, California has on the family reunification highway, the social worker can, at the 6-month date, for toddlers anyway, get you off of that and go to the 2-6 hearing. And a lot of people don't know this, but in the first 6 months, even if you don't have a toddler and you're not participating in the FR plan, the social worker could ask the judge to send you to a 2-6 hearing and not give you another 6 months, because under the theory, just the theory, that you're wasting time, and therefore they shouldn't waste any more time and money. Sometimes I get the impression that a lot of decisions, although not surprised, are made on an economic basis. There's some other suggested reading I would give to the group. There's this gentleman who's a very famous legal writer. His name was Posner, and he wrote a book called The Economics of the Law. And I think all of you would be very surprised at how influential economics is in the decision-making process and in writing up laws. I mean, let's face it, the act that the federal law that Georgette mentioned earlier, signed into law by, President Clinton, was all, in my opinion, economically based. Because what was happening was grandma would become the legal guardian of the child, and the state would have to pay grandma from, for a 1-year-old until the 1-year-old was 18 years of age. And that was, millions and billions of dollars. And then when they passed the new law, grandma, after a couple years, would have to adopt the child. And then after a couple of years of being on what's called adoptions assistance, they could cut you off. And they would. When that first went into act in California, for many years, foster parents would call me and they would say, "Hey, I adopted this kid. The social worker said I would get a monthly adoptions assistance until the kid turned 18. But it's been 3 years and now they've cut me off. And I would show them a form that they signed. And I said, hey, did you sign this form? Did you even see that it says that they can cut you off at any time after so many months from adoptions assistance? And most people said, well, no, I didn't see it. The social worker just told me to sign the form. A lot of foster parents would tell me, oh, yeah, I did see that. And I asked the social worker, and the social worker told me, don't worry about it. We're going to pay you until the kid turns 18. And that wasn't true. You know, I once knew a social worker in Los Angeles, and this was her job. Her job was to go around to people who were receiving large amounts of money for children and reduce the amount and come up with a justification on why the reduction was taking place. So if you thought that none of this had to do with economics and only had to do with the best interest of the child, I mean, you're sadly mistaken. And I hate to say that, but it's true.
It's true.
Economics plays a large part in everything in our community, in our state, in our city, in our country. You know, just look at some of the political polls for the midterm election. What's the number one issue that people are concerned about? The economy, money. How much money do I get to keep? How much money goes into my pocket? It's about the economics when it really comes down to it. And I think a lot of times when we go to court, we're fooling ourselves that economics, doesn't play a role. Many, many years ago, I represented a woman who had a very questionable background, and she was and profession, and she was using drugs. And admittedly, she was using crack cocaine at that time, which was real big, in our country, many years ago. Anyway, they took her kids away from her, 5 kids. And they placed them, I think, in 4 different foster homes. And to my surprise, and the surprise of everyone on the case, in the first 6 months of reunification services after the disposition hearing, she got clean and sober. Clean and sober. And when they did the 6-month report, the social worker wrote in the report, she's done everything. I would give her children back, except she doesn't have a place to live. See, by this time, she had lost her government-funded housing because she didn't have the kids anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, although I'm not sure, DCFS had a part in that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that she was, the 6-month hearing came up, she was couch surfing, from friend to friend and staying here and there. But she didn't have any place to take 5 kids. And I was really concerned about this. And I did some research, some legal research into parts of the code here in California that very few people quote or talk about in court. And it's the 16,500 sections of the Welfare and Institutions Code. And I did some research in other states. And in another state, I think it was Arizona, the Supreme Court there, I think at one time had ruled that once you take somebody's kids away and they lose their home, part of the reunification services that you have to give them is housing. Help them get up on their feet. Well, I did some discovery and I found out that this lady's 5 children in 4 different foster homes they were paying over $5,000 in foster care payments at that time. Now it's probably 7, 8, 9,000. And I prepared a motion, and the one thing that really caught the judge's attention was that they were paying more in foster care than it would cost for them to pay her rent per month. The case was continued many times, and finally, DCFS settled the case, right? And they actually got this woman an apartment, first and last month's rent. They were paying her rent. They bought her all, I don't think they bought them, but they got people to donate furniture, appliances like stove, refrigerator. I mean, she was set, literally set, because they helped her get her children back. Now, when I bring that up today, in some cases, people look at me and laugh because it's not something that comes up all the time. And heaven forbid, we actually help these people who are now homeless because they lost their subsidized housing. You know, there's a whole different attitude towards people these days. You know, this is 2022. It's not, 1995, right? People think differently, feel differently. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but economics does play a part. Go ahead, Miss G.
I just wanted to also bring to your attention, you guys. You guys ask me all the time why do they change social workers so rapidly? And I tell you guys constantly the same thing. They want to confuse the case. Here's a perfect example today. This mother has one child. There was a domestic violence between her and the father. Not a bad one, but like a verbal one. Kind of like, I'm not going to take out the trash, domestic violence, right? The neighbor reported the father and the mom to the police. The police came, called the Department of Child Services. They came the same night or the following day. Now, the mother was getting 6 days a week overnight visits after, they were investigating or what have you. Then later on, they changed the social worker, that said all this wonderful stuff about them, changed the social worker to a different social worker. That's the 5th social worker, by the way. And that social worker said, no, we're not going to have 6 nights, 6 overnight visits unmonitored, blah, blah, blah. Then they took the child again from her, saying, we discovered there was a report made that the father was there visiting her. That wasn't true. It wasn't true at all, because the father, the day that the social worker said he was there, it shows on his Ring camera at his house, in his living room, sitting down, fell asleep watching a movie on the sofa. How can he be in 2 places at once? Right? It's impossible, because the Ring camera showed the date, the time, the timestamp of when he was home. The social worker, the new one, didn't realize or didn't know that he had a Ring camera at home and that he had evidence that he was at home. The court-appointed attorney did not want to submit the evidence into court. They said, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not going to work. The judge always follows what the social worker recommends, which is true. I believe that. But again, I'm just letting you know why they tend to change social workers often, because they want to confuse your case. And remember that this is all a confusion. I call it the devil trickery. Creating chaos, creating more chaos to the point where a new attorney cannot process what the fuck just happened. That's why when you win a case against the Department of Child Services, you have to use specific strategy, right? All the chaos they created on your case has to be held with a specific strategy to win your case. Remember that. It doesn't happen overnight. I have a client that said, I want to get my kids tomorrow. But her case has been open for 8 months. And she wants the attorney to get her kids tomorrow, or else she doesn't want to hire an attorney. You guys need to be realistic. We didn't get you there, right? In order to get you out of that mess, you need to be able to work with the attorney, and don't expect the last 8 months to stop immediately. Especially when we don't know anything about your damn case. We don't know how you got there to begin with. We don't know what's in your minute orders. We have no idea. No idea what's going on. So there is help. There is a strategy. But in order for us to get to that point, we need to review what happened in your case. That's very important. Okay, so don't question. You guys are stuck with the same questions. Why are they doing this? Why? Stop asking why. You need to do your research. You need to take action. I want to also express to you guys, when you guys are collecting food stamps and cash aid with DPSS, remember this: DPSS is working with the Department of Child Services. If you're collecting food stamps and cash aid and you're waiting for Section 8 to happen and you have babies less than 8 years old, you are a target to the Department of Child Services. Oftentimes, they will come to you and say, we received an anonymous call. You, in your head, thinking the anonymous call came from my sister who had a fight with my husband in Thanksgiving of last year. Or you would think that my mother-in-law did that anonymous call. But they will make you think that. They will make you think it's somebody from the family, but it's not. Because remember what I told you guys earlier, when you have a child at a certain age, that child is an adoptive age, meaning they want to make money from that child. If you're waiting on a Section 8 because you're homeless, or you had bad luck in your life or what have you, you're a perfect target to them because they know you can't afford an attorney. One of our clients that hired us 2 months ago or 3 months ago, the social worker asked her, "Oh, can you afford an attorney?" And she said no, and she started crying and crying and crying to the social worker, thinking she has empathy for her. She doesn't. She just wants to know if you have any other ways to afford an attorney, right? So when she told her that and she cried, then they started taking more advantage of her. When her aunt in another state found out in Florida that she needs help, they didn't know that her aunt had money. So her aunt told her, let's call an attorney, let's find an attorney for you, let's hire an attorney for you, etc., etc., and I will handle the financial, process of your case. So her aunt became the guarantor on her case, and she's been helping her. That social worker that asked her that question was shocked that she actually hired an attorney from our office. And then she went to the parent, the mother, and she said, I thought you said you can't afford an attorney. So where are you getting the money? Are you selling drugs? Right away, she started attacking her character by making it look like she's selling drugs. You understand what I'm trying to tell you, I hope, guys? They'll use any type of tactics to attack you and who you are as a parent or who you are as a woman. So be very mindful of that. The social worker is not your friend. Do not tell them you can't afford an attorney. Find a way to afford one. Do not disclose too much. You guys are disclosing too much to them, thinking you're going to get a different result. It's not going to happen.
Okay, Ms. G, thank you very much for those words of wisdom. Savannah, I want to thank you for being on a special guest this evening. Please keep in contact with us. I'd really appreciate it. Also, I'm going to have Grace, our producer, contact you, maybe about being a guest on some of our other shows, or perhaps even being a host yourself, having gone through this terrible experience. Ms. G, thank you very much for your passion and wisdom this evening. Very much appreciated. Everyone, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific time on The Secret: How to Fight CPS and Win.